So let me get straight to tell you what I've gone through during my relationship. I am Nick, 29 years old, working as an engineer at a private firm. I had a girlfriend, Emily, 28 years old, with whom I'd been in a relationship for 4 years. I met her while attending an interview at my current job place. She was also there and was freshly graduated from college. I was already an intern to another company. I saw her sitting nervously waiting for her turn for the interview. I was mesmerized by looking at her. Her face had a tone that I had never seen before. She was just an astounding amalgamation of innocence and cuteness. I was hypnotized at first, but then went to her and asked how she was going. She was very afraid as it was her first interview after college. Her name was Emma. Instantly, I fetched water for her and then talked about her education and family for like 15 minutes. She told me that she lived with her mother in a nearby building. While we were talking, she became a little comfortable. Then the man standing outside the interview room called her name. She then looked at me with gratitude and slowly walked towards the room for her interview. I was also feeling the same fear before, but I took Kane now. I was feeling empathy for her. I just wanted her to ace the interview. The lines which I kept craving to repeat in my interview were now turned into prayers for Emma. So I would say that after 30 minutes, she came out with confidence and a smile on her face. Before I could ask her about the interview, I was called for the interview. She just wished me good luck and went out. My interview went very well, and after 1 week of waiting, I was finally selected for the job. I was very surprised to see that Emma was also selected besides me. We both were happy to see each other again. The first week of our new job went by while spending most of the time together because we had to complete joining formalities together, so we both developed a connection that we quit absorbing. As time passed, we often met each other after work or during lunch break because we were serving at different departments. I would say that at that time, we had developed a connection. Our bonding was becoming stronger with every day. Maybe that's why we never got into a fight for almost 2 years. One day, as we had spent 2.5 years together, she told me that she needed some money for a friend who was in a dire need. So I had not even asked for the friend, although I knew that she had no friends but colleagues. Whatsoever the person or the reason was, I provided the money she asked for. After about 3 months since I donated the money, I asked about how her friend was doing now. Is she well or still needs money? She was silent for a moment and then told me that no, he is doing quite fine. And then there I was, confused after listening to her word, he. That night I tried not to ask about the special friend. Still I was curious to know about that. So I asked her where this friend works and where she met him. Are you being jealous or thinking about something else? She instantly changed her tone and asked me, no, my love, I just want to know if he is still facing problems so that we could help him. I take a what to say besides this. You're such a nice guy, she said while hugging me. I am nice. Bullshit. And then I never wanted to ask anything else. But I had doubts that something fishy is going on. But somehow I wanted not to stand up to such things between us because we had loved each other for such a long time. So I decided to never talk about it and also give my wife a gift. On my way home, I stopped at a jewelry shop and bought a diamond ring for her. When I reached home, I realized that she had spent all day preparing my favorite dishes, and I was amazed by the efforts that she had put into the meal. After we sat down at the table, I thanked her for the delicious meal and told her how much I appreciated all that she did for me. She told me that she was just happy to be able to do something special for me, as I had already purchased a ring for her. So after we finished our meal, I just stood up and announced that I also had a surprise for her as well. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small blue velvet box. When she opened it, she grasped in delight at the beautiful diamond ring box. I could see her eyes filled with tears of joy. I got down on my knees and asked her to marry me. She happily accepted and we embraced each other. At that point, our love was stronger than ever before. After proposing to her, we got married the next month. Her mother also attended our marriage ceremony. From that day on, we were even more devoted to each other, and our love continued to grow only stronger. ABS, we were just enjoying the best days of our life. If anyone could ask about our life, then we both were seen as truly happily married couple. But the oddest thing is, she asked for half of my salary every month. She told me that she wanted to open her own business in the future. That's why I would have to provide her with the amount. I wanted to turn down her proposal, but I was in love with her and couldn't disagree with her. So I accepted her proposal. As we had been married for almost 1.5 years now, and like all other couples, we had our fair share of pretty arguments. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, I noticed that she had left her dirty laundry on the floor instead of putting it in the basket. I mentioned it to her in a casual tone, but she became defensive and did not want to talk. She was asleep in no moment, and I was sitting there on the bed, dumbfounded. What the hell just happened to me? It was like she accused me of always nagging her about trivial things. The next morning, I asked her about what she did, but to my surprise, she became angry and accused me of becoming controlling and not respecting her personal space. The argument escalated, and ultimately, we both shouted at each other, brought up our past grievances, and refused to listen to each other's perspective. Eventually, I had to storm off to work, angry and hurt, but I got back early from work, as I couldn't concentrate on my work due to mental agony. I got back to my apartment. I saw her sitting in the lounge but did not talk or asked about the day, so now we were avoiding speaking to each other. We went about our day in silence, but it seemed we both were feeling guilty for letting our petty arguments get out of hand. The very next morning, I realized how silly and childish our argument had been. So I decided to talk to her and end this distress. Then I went to the kitchen and went behind her back to hug her. We apologized to each other and made a promise to communicate more effectively in the future. Despite our occasional petty fights like this, we loved each other deeply and were committed to making our marriage work. As another week passed on, her mother came to visit us for a week or so. She was very happy to see her daughter so happily living. I told her to marry you. I could see you far better than that boy in our neighborhood. I was dazed to listen to this. Who's this boy? I asked instantly. Before I could get any answer, my wife came towards and grabbed her mom with her for shopping. I could see my wife telling her mother to not discuss this again in a very harsh tone. Her mother turned her sad face towards me at the door and got out. This reaction of my wife made me look like an idiot. I did not expect such an immature behavior from her. She could just tell me that she had nothing to hide now. She already promised me to make our marriage survive through thick and thin, but here I was sitting to think about every possible impending misery. One evening when I came back home after work, I saw her mom sitting alone on the balcony. I asked about my wife and her mom told me that my wife had gone to a nearby market. I thought that it was the perfect time to ask about my wife. You were telling me about that boy in your neighborhood. What's his story? I asked her mom. Oh son, there's nothing special to tell about. They just had a small thing going on between them, and now it's all gone since she met you. That boy was just a Piaz and would take money from my daughter every time they would meet. Her mom just told me. Listening to this, I felt miserable. My heart was reminded to me that my wife also asked me for money for her friend. Was this the same guy? I didn't know what to think for her, but somehow I managed not to bring these things in the presence of my wife, although I decided to look if they had been in contact with each other or not. One night as my wife was asleep, I managed to unlock her phone and opened her chat. I saw this unknown number of a guy who was asking my wife to keep her promise. I scrolled for older messages and then realized that she had promised a guy that he must wait for some time and then she would arrange money for him. Don't leave me please, I'll do whatever you want. She was pleading with him. So get this, I was shocked to see how my wife kept her old love alive while married to me. How could she do such a cruel thing to me? But now was not the time to ask her about anything because her mother was staying with us. That's why I waited for the day when her mom would be gone. The next day, we again were engaged in an argument over just a small and insignificant, but it quickly escalated into a full-blown argument. Her mom was sitting with us while all of this was happening. The reason was this: I had left my socks on the floor, and she was tired of constantly picking up after me. She confronted me about it and asked me to start putting my socks in the hamper like I was supposed to. However, I did not see what the big deal was, as I was very tired from the work. In return, I told her that she was being overly dramatic and that it is just a pair of socks. But to my surprise, she was furious. She told me that she could not see how my actions were affecting her. She yelled at me while telling me that I needed to start showing more consideration for her feelings and start picking up after myself. I was just taken aback by her reaction. I had no idea that my socks were causing such a big problem. I apologized and promised to do better in the future. She was still angry and stormed off to bed. As I sat there with her mom, I couldn't help but feel guilty for my action. I knew that I needed to start being more considerate about such things. Her mother felt sorry for me, but I told her that she did not need to worry. I could manage all of this because I am the one who had made big mistake. I sat there thinking, what had I done wrongs to her? She just snapped at me for nothing. I was just hurt and confused as the evening wore on. She came to me and told me that she was feeling guilty for the way she had treated me. She realized that she had taken out her stress on the person who was always there for her, and she knew that she needed to apologize. I'm sorry for the way I acted earlier. I had other things going on in my mind and I took it out on you. That was unfair and unjust, and I am so sorry. Through this, I was surprised by her apology, but I was also touched by it. So I told her that she did not need to apologize and she could tell me whatever the problem she was facing. She just smiled and embraced me. The very next week, her mother went back to her home. I was dropping her off at the bus station. On our way towards the station, she asked me to forgive her daughter for such a nonsense issue and make the way for love to flourish, because that's how we both would live in utmost compassion and elation. It's been 3 days since her mother went back. One evening, she told me that she needed some money, but I was already giving her cash every month. Why you needed such a huge amount for? I asked casually, would you give it to me or not? She ignored my question and asked again, okay, I've no hard cash on me, but I can write you a check. Anyhow, I gave her the check and I knew that the money was for the POS guy. So I decided to give her the taste of cheating. Soon after she went out, I called the manager of my bank and told him that I have lost one of my signed checks and that if someone comes with that check, he would call on my number immediately. After 30 minutes, I received a call from the bank. When I picked up, the manager told me that a couple had come with a check with my signature. I told him to hold them there and would be there in no time. As I reached the bank, I saw my wife with a guy sitting next to her. When she saw me, she was pale-faced and looked towards the guy with her. Before they could utter a word, I took that check and turned it into small pieces. You can now go wherever you want, but not to my house. I don't need you anywhere near me. I told her this with anger and pain in my voice and went out.